try to get everyone checked in here. So as I call your name, if you could confirm if you have a name on the screen that name is correct. And then tell me who you're representing here today, whether you are a member of the applicant team or the owner team, a neighboring property owner, or some other member of a community group or someone else. So I'll start with Eric Russo. Eric, are you with us?
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Russo with Hillside Trust, representing the hillsides of Greater Cincinnati.
Okay, great. Welcome, Eric. I see that we have Matt Lashide from the Planning Department's Zoning Division.
Hello.
Hi, Matt. I think your mic is up again.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, my name is Matt Lashide. I'm the zoning hearing examiner who's reviewing the case.
Okay, great. Thanks. I see that we have two people in a room under Terry. If you could unmute for me.
Oh, hi. And my husband, Gary.
Could you remind me your last name again?
It walks, W-A-C-H-S.
W-A-C-H-S.
Right.
Okay, Terry and Gary.
Right.
Okay, great. And did you say that you're neighboring property owners? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Welcome. Okay. I see we have several people in a room under Jody Sedler.
Yes, Jody Sedler, President, St. Ursula Villa.
Heidi Huber, Director of Operations, St. Ursula Villa.
Chris Hudapole Construction.
Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. Right, I'm just going to throw the walks on mute there while we're getting everyone checked in. So we have a Michael Chasnoff, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
And I'm a property owner at 3753 Vineyard Pl.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you, David.
Sure. Steve Corte.
Yeah, my name is Steve Cordy with the Kleingers Group. We're civil engineers working with the applicant owner of the school.
Okay, great. I see that we also have another member of the zoning division, Emily A. House, with us. Welcome, Emily.
Yes, thanks.
And Mary Helen Weber.
Yes.
Are you a neighboring property owner? Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Okay. Are we expecting anyone else on the applicant owner side to be joining us, or are we ready to proceed?
David, I just wanted to say that there's several others that could not attend that I talked to.
Okay.
So just want you to know.
Sure. Yeah, I did receive some email correspondence on this, and I tried to upload those into our CAGIS case file. So those will all be a part of the record, anything I received via email, regardless of whether they actually are able to attend today. I'll go over to Ms. Sedler. Are you expecting anyone else to join us here today, or are you ready to proceed? And you're muted, right? Ms. Sedler, can you hear me?
We're all present.
Ready to proceed? Okay, I think that's a yes. So I will go ahead and read through our hearing script. This will just cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we will jump into it. So this is the, excuse me, the May 29th, 2024 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. Again, my name is David Sturkey. I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the city, and I'll be presiding over the hearing today. The case before us is case number ZH20240050. That's 3660 Vineyard Place. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any potential opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any potential opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. For our purposes here today, anyone who's a member of the applicant team, either from the school or the contractor or the engineer, I'll give all of you an opportunity to speak at that time. One of you can speak, all of you can speak. It's really up to you how you want to orient your presentation. After everyone has had an opportunity on the applicant and owner side to speak, I'll then move to our zoning plans examiner here, the city zoning plans examiner, Matt Leschide, to add any testimony in addition to a staff report. I'll then move to the public, and they'll have an opportunity to speak after we've heard from the zoning division. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to the argument that was offered in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those as we go. But in the event there's some defect that prevents us from me fully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay. The last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, really doing anything other than just strictly observing here today, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. If you're not yet certain whether you're going to provide testimony here today, I can always swear you in midway through the hearing. But if you know at this time that you would like to provide some testimony, I'm going to go ahead and collectively swear all of those people in together. So I'm going to do that now. So if everyone could take themselves off of mute, I'll need everyone to raise their right hand and to answer out loud. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do. I do.
Yes.
Great. And to Terry and Gary, we'll need you to go off of mute and to be sworn if you'd like to provide any testimony. And I'll give you a minute to do that. We'll get you when we come back around to the public comment. So let's go ahead and start then with, I'll turn it over to the room with Ms. Sedler, Huber, and Hudipol. Will you all be taking the lead on the presentation here today?
You want Steve to go first?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, we can have Steve say a few things first.
Sure.
Steve Corte.
Mr. Corte, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. Thank you. Again, my name is Steve Cordy with the Kleinger's Group. We're civil engineers working with St. Ursula on the project. And first, on behalf of St. Ursula, thanks for the opportunity. As usual, we appreciate the chance to present our project. As usual, I want to thank staff. They always do a very nice job setting the table. Matt, you did a great job with the report. Thank you for helping our job make it a little easier. It's a very comprehensive report. In general, we're in agreement with the findings. I have one clarification just to kind of make, I'm diving into the technical details a little bit, but the report calls out for relief for the cumulative excavation of 16.2 feet for the pavilion area of the project. I have a little different interpretation of maybe what the cumulative excavation is. It's easier to point out on the site plan, but just to clarify, in our proposed pavilion site, the maximum cut is on the southwest corner of that pad. It's about 6 feet. I'm rounding a little bit. It's about 6 feet. That's at the southwest corner, and at the northeast corner is the maximum fill of about 3 feet. So I kind of interpret that the cumulative maximum cut and added to the maximum fill is around 9 feet. But regardless, it's over the 8-foot number. But I just wanted to clarify that we're not like going to have a big cut of 16 feet or a big fill of 16 feet. We're trying to, subtly, we designed this to kind of bench this into the hillside a little bit. So I just wanted to point that out. And similarly, the relief is called out for the proposed concrete stairs coming from the school building. Now we're really going to we're proposing to install those stairs pretty much following the existing grade of a slope. There's not really a big cut or fill, but I think the interpretation is a little different. So, but again, the report was very comprehensive. We appreciate it. But in general, the project and, the proposed pavilion site, it's currently open space and grass, gently sloping. And as usual, anytime we design a project like this, our intent is to minimize the grading footprint and be sensitive to existing trees and buffers. So we want to maintain as much as practical the existing tree buffer, and I think our design does a very good job of that. In addition, we're calling out for 7 new trees to be planted and a dozen or so shrubs to kind of help with some visual screening as well for the neighbors. Any concerns there may be with visual screening. Again, our goal is to enhance the existing condition and not take away. So lastly, I think it's important to note that concurrent with the zoning relief we're seeking, we'll be navigating the building permit process as well, of course, which involves many city departments, the building department, MSD, whatever. And we will certainly work with them, all the necessary departments to procure the building permit as may be required. So that's a kind of a quick overview of the project. Again, in addition to the staff report, we appreciate the opportunity to present, and I'll be on to answer any kind of technical questions.
Okay. And it's Cordy, right?
It's Cordy, rhymes with
Okay.
40.
Sorry.
No worries.
I think I mispronounced that twice now. I'm going to ask a couple questions just based on, and I'm going to share my screen here.
Yes.
So this is sort of an overview here of the St. Villa property, right? Outlined in red.
Yes.
And this is the area that you're proposing to install the pavilion.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And
Correct.
let me see if I can do this on a Google satellite image here. So is this this area without the trees here? This is where the pavilion will go.
That's it. Yep.
Okay, got it. And let's see. And so this is an image of what that looks from the street view. What that looks like.
Correct.
From the street view. Okay. This is the proposed pavilion, or a drawing of the proposed pavilion.
Yes.
How tall is it to the top here? Do you know?
I believe maximum to the peak is around 11 feet.
Okay. And let's see. I mean, so this looks relatively flat. I mean, is this portion a relatively flat portion of the property where the pavilion's going to be installed?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, if you can stay still, I'll kind of mark up the screen what I was explaining before. So it gently slopes from left to right. You can kind of see it, but we're kind of proposing to cut on this side and fill a little bit on this side from left to right there to make it flat. So there's gently sloping currently, but that's where the kind of the cut and fill, as I was explaining before, that's kind of how it orients.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and you said for the pavilion portion, the cut and fill is you believe is less than 16 feet.
That's my interpretation. Again, the maximum
Okay.
cut, like on this side over here, is like 6 foot where I just marked, and the maximum fill over here is like 2 or 3 feet.
Okay, gotcha. And then there are also stairs proposed as well, right? I think you can sort of see those a little bit better on this site plan.
Yes. To the bottom, if you pan down a little. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. There's two sets of stairs. There's coming from the parking lot up above, which is this red area. Can you see my markings when I'm doing this?
Yeah, we can. Yeah,
Okay,
I actually didn't even
perfect.
know you could do that.
So those are the stairs coming down kind of from the school on grade. And then these stairs come from the kind of the crosswalk down to the pavilion pad. So there's kind of 2 sets of steps. So
got it. Okay. Great. All right. I just wanted to clarify that and run through a few of those images. So I think that's all the questions I have now. I think if the folks in the room together from St. Ursula would like to add anything to Mr. Cordy's statements, now would be the time if you want to unmute. I do think that we are having a slight connection issue with the folks at St. Ursula.
Okay, yes.
It's
Yeah.
reestablished.
I'm sorry.
Building
Yeah,
on,
go ahead.
from building on what Steve had said, to give a little background, the pavilion itself was part of a outdoor experiential learning initiative. And there was a donor that was particularly interested in expanding our outdoor area to truly create a outdoor classroom that could be used even in inclement weather. The location of the pavilion was chosen primarily for two reasons. One, it is the most adjacent to the classroom access, just having to cross the drive there. So you aren't using instruction time trying to get to the location. But even more so than that, it's because of the footprint. That again is primarily flat. The excavation going on is simply to level out along the edges. There on our campus, there is little, if any, flat area besides the soccer field below. So the idea was that this footprint was non-disruptive. We would be able to basically put the pavilion right there on that spot. And from the natural slope of the ravine from the neighbors above, if you were to look down that ravine, once the pavilion is in with the natural grade slope, it has an evergreen colored, that's truly the color of the metal roof. The trees will be placed now that the stairs have been changed to enter from the other side of the pavilion directly from the drive. The trees will be located along that edge adjacent to where the property owners would be looking down the ravine. We would plant evergreen trees. We spoke to neighbors yesterday specific to that. Our intent again is for our own campus, but also for our neighbors, that this fits naturally into the landscape or something that was stuck on campus. We want it to blend in,
Ms. Huber,
not only
Ms.
for
Huber,
our sake, but for the sake of our neighbors. And
Ms. Huber, you got cut off there on your last sentence. I think you said the intent was, and then we lost you.
the intent was for it to be to naturally as fit into the landscape as possible. Again, the design of it, the colors, the natural woods, the stonework, not only complement our current architecture, but also complement the natural landscape that is being placed with it. So aesthetically, as well as functionality, all of those factors were, and there, I guess the idea of looking at collecting feedback from surrounding neighbors and so forth, we looked at it that we were placing something that was not obstructing, was not invasive, and was not going to even disrupt the natural footprint. We were placing it in the footprint that was already designed for it. We're placing a concrete slab. There's no excavation work. There's no piles or structural concerns. We made sure to stay outside of that breach. We're not going into the natural landscape that's already there. It fits within the footprint that's already cleared.
Okay. What are the dimensions of the pavilion itself?
40 by 60.
Okay. 40 by 60 and 11 feet tall. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Would anyone else on the applicant owner team like to say anything before we move to zoning staff?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. And you all have a chance to respond to any testimony you hear throughout the hearing here today. Okay, move over to Mr. Lashide.
Hi. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sturkey. So Mr. Cordy outlined some of the relief required. So there's conditional use approval. A school is a conditional use in the single family 20 district. So any expansion of a school requires review. This can be anything from a new playground in the back of a school building to a new football stadium. And what we look at is how this would impact neighboring property owners, if it would impact neighboring property owners, and what can be done to mitigate those impacts. And the second piece of relief that's being reviewed is the excavation and fill. And Mr. Cordy outlined how that's interpreted. I understand there may be some discrepancy there. The way that the zoning code and the zoning department reviews that is from the lowest point of excavation on one, cohesive element of the project to the highest point of fill. So it's from the very bottom of the steps that lead to the pavilion all the way to the top of the wall at the northeast corner. That's where we measure it. I understand that, it's not like a 16-foot retaining wall. And if it were, we may not be supportive of the project. I think the only retaining walls are about 3 feet, Mr. Cordy, 3 to 4 feet. But the reason that the project needs relief is because we measure it from the lowest point of excavation all the way to the highest point of fill. So that's what necessitates this review. Now, with that in mind, the shelter and the steps are generally following the topography of the natural earth beneath them. There is, a little bit of regrading that's required. And as I mentioned, some small retaining walls about 3 feet tall. But generally, the shelter even slopes down a little bit, and the steps are carved into the hillside. They follow the topography. There's not earth that's being moved substantially to accommodate the project. Generally, the project is built, it's sited intentionally on an area that's already relatively flat, and steps are proposed within the hillside as necessary. So for those reasons, although the way that we measure the excavation and fill is beyond that 8-foot threshold, we are supportive of the project because it generally follows the existing topography. And regarding the conditional use approval, what we look at is if there would be an impact on neighboring property owners and what measures can be taken to mitigate such impact. So measuring on Cajus, the closest residential properties are a little over 300 feet to the northwest, and there's noticeable topographic change and existing landscaping in between them. There's a bit of a, let's say, a ravine or a ditch, and then it goes back up with trees already in place in between the residential properties and the proposed pavilion. And the applicant on their landscaping plan is proposing additional landscaping. I believe the applicant mentioned that there was additional evergreens proposed as a part of a conversation that was had yesterday. I'd be curious to hear if you could elaborate more on that, because that's not something that we were aware of at this time. But there are, to our knowledge, already existing trees and new trees proposed. So because of the existing topographic difference and screening, staff does not feel that there would be a substantial negative impact on adjacent property owners as a result of this project, and staff is supportive of the conditional use approval. Our administrator, Ms. Ahouse, is on the call as well. Ms. Ahouse, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think Matt really summarized our position, both in his presentation today and his staff report. In terms of the conditional use, this pavilion is appropriately located, designed, and configured to minimize adverse effects of the expansion of the school use on the surrounding area. In terms of the hillside review, the design of this pavilion is intentional to minimize the excavation needed. There are no cliff-like vertical slopes that are being proposed. The design generally fits the hillside rather than altering the hillside to fit the proposed design. And it is a gentle regrading for both the stairs and the pavilion. And all of the work is, the findings of the preliminary geotechnical report based on field observation, design, soil information, and the geotechnical engineer's expertise are that the proposed pavilion will not adversely affect the stability of the hillsides. So that's what we have based our recommendation of approval on.
Okay, great. And to be clear, that they're asking for relief to allow 16, just over 16 feet of cumulative cut and fill, but that's not digging a hole that is 16 feet deep and filling it, correct? It's a series of cuts spread out over the area there.
Yes, it's a series of smaller cuts. I think as Mr. Cordy explained earlier, the largest cut is around 6 feet, but most of the excavation and fill is smaller than that, just sort of a gentle regrading.
Okay, got it. All right. Thank you very much to the design division. I'm going to move on now to public comment. I'll sort of start off the orientation of my screen here, how I sort of check people in, but we will begin with Mr. Russo and then move over to Terry and Gary Walks.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Eric Russo with the Hillside Trust. I just wanted to comment because I was called out several years ago to look at one of the properties at 690 Riesling Knoll for some hillside instability. And I'm just concerned about the impact of this project, given that the engineer has apparently not done any kind of factor of safety analysis on the hillside. And given there have been some instability issues on this hillside going up to Riesling Knoll and to Chardonnay Ridge, I think it's important to know what those impacts would be with this development. I think this is a pretty large project that's being proposed. And there are some aesthetic issues as well that I think could negatively impact the neighborhood. And rather than getting into those, I would direct your attention to Mary Helen Weber's letter, which outlines a lot of concerns of the neighbors with potential visual impacts. But that said, I'm concerned about some of the geotechnical impacts and the fact that the engineering report is more of a letter of support and not a full-blown analysis. So I want to state that for the record.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate your time and testimony here today. Okay, would the Terry and Gary Walks like to provide any testimony? If so, you'll have to unmute.
Go ahead.
Hi.
And I'll need you to, if you're both going to speak, I'll need you both to raise your right hand so you can be sworn.
Are you going to speak? You probably will.
Yeah.
Just put your hand up.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do.
We do.
Okay. All right. What would you like to tell us?
Well, ditto what Eric just said. The huge concern here is the integrity of the hillside. And I don't think that's really been looked at deeply from the get-go. Do you have soil samples? Do you have borings? Do you know where bedrock is? Do you know what kind of soil is on that plateau? Was that filled to start? And the other thing is the size of this. It's like having a commercial building in our backyard. I mean, 40 by 60 is humongous. And, you know, a green roof is great and that's appreciated. But, you know, you talk about the aesthetics and the green. We have a clear-cut view right straight through to this 40 by 60 structure. And that's huge. And I mean, we don't want trees to block our view. We want trees around the pavilion to block the pavilion. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's the best location for it. Very, very concerned about the integrity of the hillside and what it will do. And I think they definitely need to provide more tests and history on that particular hillside and the excavation. There are conflicting reports in there about what will be cut, what will be filled, what will be left over, the soils or spoils, I don't know. It's conflicting.
Okay. Thank you. Did Mr. Walks want to say anything?
Well, I think there's 3 or 4 issues here. One, Terry has already mentioned. The other one is whatever structure goes there. And we talked about this yesterday. We want to be sure we have some good evergreen trees to block. Our house is in the direct view of this thing. You can see it from our house. You can go down there. And we talked to the principal yesterday, and they agreed to put that in writing or add it to the code or whatever, that there would be enough foliage planted there so we would not see it. The other thing is downstream, maybe when we're all gone, but I would hate to see a project like that ever get electrified with high-powered boom boxes and loudspeakers. And I know that's not the school's intention right now, but who knows what 5 years holds, just as long, because that could be that could be quite loud over there. So that was my input.
Okay. All right, great.
I forgot to speak for Tony Barnhorst, the neighbor to us who couldn't be here.
He did submit a letter
Okay.
earlier today outlining that he was objecting to allowing the exception, and said that he had problems with movement on the hillside, and so that'll become a part of the case record.
Okay, and the thing for both of us is if we ever do have any movement on this hillside, it could really cause an issue with insurance, home insurance. And he wanted a bond from the school about insurance for the rest of us if anything happens with that hillside in the future.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, that is setting any sort of bond is outside my authority for this particular hearing. But if that's something that wants to be discussed privately between the school and property owners, it certainly can. Okay, great. Thank you very much again to Terry and Gary for being here, your time and your testimony. I'm going to move on to Michael Chasnoff.
Yeah, thank you, David. And I can certainly have empathy for the homeowners that are going to be in direct view and are concerned about the stabilization of that hillside. My concern is that it's a little different. The school not too long ago, a year ago or less, created a new policy regarding the community, the neighborhood, access to walking on the grounds. And we've been told we can't walk on the grounds, and now we are being asked to approve a project on their behalf. I feel like this is an opportunity for us to create a little bit more of a joint relief, so that that many of the members in the neighborhood that cannot be here today could be more supportive, assuming that the hillside integrity it comes back in a positive, supportive way. So my feeling would be that we would all be in more support if we could come to a common ground regarding to the access around the perimeter of the school. There is no sidewalk, and with the school traffic and additional traffic associated with this project it just makes it very dangerous for people walking around Vineyard Place as well as Tusculum. So that's why we are holding back our support.
Gotcha. So if the school was more willing to allow neighbors to access their property, you believe you would be able to support this project?
Yeah, I would put that with the contingency that the soil samples and basically the ground supports the project.
Okay. All right.
David, you're breaking up right now, or that's me.
Some stability issues as well. I apologize, folks. We'll try to continue to get through this. But Mr. Chasnoff, you said you didn't have anything else. That was all you wanted to share.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. We'll move over to Mary Helen Weber, and then we'll go back to the applicants to respond to any of the comments.
Thank you. I have some observations along the lines of Mr. Chasnoff, in a sense, because knowledge of this project or anything about the essence of it has been presented to us very recently. And there was no attempt to do outreach to us neighboring properties, or to have any views gathered of what concerns we may have. And that is aggravated in a sense by the fact that we are discouraged from going on the school property, as is their right, but it resulted in the fact that the sign announcing this project and construction materials apparently have been there for quite some time, as though the school presumed that they would have approvals and that no one would object. I mean, that was at least the sense you could take from that when it was kind of sprung on us. In the overall, I think the nature of the project has two main things. One is that this is actually quite significant construction, although it has been mentioned that it's somewhat flat and everything. But in the context of a neighborhood of SF20 homes, this is a very big structure at 40 by 60. And homes in the area don't have that much square feet. Also, it would be, with all the changes that would be required to build this thing, that's about 2 stories of height, all of which neighbors looking across the ravine would be looking right at this. I saw no information evaluating how heavy the excavation and fill and the pavilion itself and the retaining walls would be on this hillside. I saw that the engineering company that had been engaged, Naylor, recommended that no excavated soil be fill be put on the hillside, as though implying certainly that there is fragility to be concerned about in terms of the weight of any such excavation. And apparently, although I agree with whoever said it was kind of confusing and sort of contradictory in a way to a newcomer to this issue, it seems as though there is going to be excavation and there are going to be retaining walls, which will add weight to this hillside. Of course, I saw no guarantees to protect homeowners who have adjacent properties that might be affected. And in real life experience, this immediate area has had slides. I believe the property where the Watts presently live and next door to them, there had been serious slides in the 90s. So this is not an idle thing that has actually happened, that homeowners have had to do remediation. This area is fragile, and without some of the soil testing and extensive work and clarity around how much excavation, how much fill, all that kind of thing, this is troubling to us. The staff report doesn't talk about any particular safeguards for the hillside. In light of this history of the area, or any assurances that had any teeth to them for the benefit of the neighboring homeowners. Also, I saw nothing about whether the school seriously considered alternative locations that would not be inordinately inconvenient to the school, but would not involve disturbing this hillside, which has specific zoning provisions against excavation over 8 feet, as I read the materials. There were also references by earlier commentators that appearance and noise are concerns. And there was reference to the fact that trees are contemplated. But in the drawings that I have seen, the only trees that are drawn are on the side of the school, nothing on the side of the ravine that the homes in my neighborhood would be looking at. There may be more contemplated, but nothing has been told to us, and we have not been consulted on this. Yet the school has intention to plant trees on their side of things. So that, it's puzzling. It sort of is consistent with the idea that perhaps we were not in the forefront of everybody's thinking in the planning, although they may have felt that was the case. When you're on the receiving end, it wasn't. There was mention also of noise and sort of oral assurances that there is not that intention, but in the staff report recommendations, I didn't see any conditions that were recommended that the school would have to continue to live up to in that area. Noise will carry across the hollow ravine, and I think that's another concern people had. The elevations, the drawings that I saw in the staff report, and the general orientation of everything that I've seen is looking at things from the school's perspective, not from the perspective of the people who are the neighbors, who live along with the school along this ravine. And there are some statements that tend to minimize the excavation and fill problems that we have talked about. Finally, I just want to mention that this is not my area of particular expertise, land use planning and so forth, but I have some familiarity with the City Plan 2012, which contains a lot of stress on hillside preservation and safety, and the importance of considering other alternatives to disrupting, endangering hillsides, to consider other alternatives that would accomplish the same objectives, but would not be so damaging. Those seem to be priorities of the city according to its 2012 plan. And I saw no evidence that those kinds of alternatives were considered here. Like I said, nor did I see, sort of caveats that would be asked of the school if they were approved to do this, relating to damage to our neighboring properties and hillsides, hours of use of the pavilion, sound, and the trees that would be facing our direction, that people like the Waxes would be looking directly at. So,
okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Weber. Appreciate your time and your testimony here today. And your email that we received earlier will also be a part of the case record. Okay. Going to turn it back over to the applicants and Mr. Cordy. Anything you would like to say in response to some of the comments? In particular, there were quite it seemed like a consistent thread that the neighboring property owners and the Hillside Trust feel like there's been an inadequate amount of analysis done to ensure that the hillside is going to be protected and the integrity of the hillside is going to be protected, and this is a safe location for this structure. Could you speak to that and any other concerns you want to respond to?
Sure. So for the record, I am not the geotechnical engineer of record. That is, his name was mentioned, Matt Naylor. I think he had a preliminary report. I think he's out of town this week, or he perhaps would have been on the call, but I think I can speak for the school when I say, they'll do the analysis required, the soil, slope stability, factor safety, whatever, whatever's needed to meet the building code requirements of the city, building department requirements of the city. It's kind of hard to explain, but the houses of concern are across a ravine. So without looking at the topography and getting real technical, the slope that we're cutting into is really, it's downhill from the school. It's not the slope. It's not the same slope that behind the houses and that just presented, that were just represented. So, but again, I'll have to defer to Matt Naylor and his, potential future perspective report to respond to the technical stability.
Could I stop you there just for a minute? Maybe lean on the zoning division here for just a second. Are either Ms. Ahaus or Mr. Lascheid familiar with the process of evaluating the geotech after it leaves the zoning arena?
Yes, and I don't have a lot of detail on that, but I think that is where the building plans examiners are doing a more thorough review to determine that what, if this is the engineering, the geotechnical report that's provided, if they need more information, they will deny it. They will request a more detailed soil analysis or geotechnical report. Or sometimes they also will require elements like a special inspection during construction to monitor the construction activities and their impact.
Okay, so if this were approved to move forward, there would be additional city department evaluation of the suitability of the soils and the hillside for this?
Yes, the building plans examiners will still be doing the more structural technical evaluation of the design. This is really just the zoning review, and it is not determining that this is the appropriate geotechnical report for the building permit approval. That is completely out of our hands.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thanks for that.
Mr. Sturkey, if I may say two small things. One, in response to Mr. Corti, the homes that directly look at this site are on the one side of the ravine, but although farther down, my home is on the same side of the ravine as the hillside. So if the hillside were to be in distress all along, ultimately there could be some domino type effect from that perspective.
And I'll just respond. I don't recall which house is yours, but again, I'll defer to the geotechnical engineer and the whole building permit process to get the necessary permits to appease the building department to make sure everything is good. I understand your concern, and I certainly sensitive to that, but I say we, the school and the geotechnical engineer, will dive into the required details and make sure that is all in good order.
Well, in that connection as well, to Ms. Ahos's comment that this is really beyond zoning, the zoning provisions that talk about some of the protections for hillsides are zoning provisions, and that is the subject of this conversation. Those are, built in the 16 feet and many of the city's principles in its plan apply, I'm sure, across the board.
Sure, there are certainly hillside standards that we are here to review. I think a few of them were mentioned earlier, but there are standards if you want to exceed those base development requirements that you need to consider. Cuts in the hillside if they would leave cliff-like vertical slopes or excessively high retaining walls. Buildings being designed to fit into the hillside rather than altering the hillside to fit buildings. Hillside development should be designed to minimize excavation for foundations, parking, and access drives. Retain surrounding tree cover as much as possible. Maintain a clear sense of the hillside brow. Those are generally, again, those are the some of the standards that we review. Some of the more technical geotechnical analysis is done at a different stage in the city permitting process, I think was the larger point there. Mr. Corti,
yes.
In considering some of those scenarios I just mentioned, I mean, can you talk about why, again, you think this is appropriate?
So, I mean, everything you just read, those bullet points there, I do think we are adhering to. Just maintaining the intent of maintaining the existing footprint and not, building major walls or major cliff-like slopes. We are, in my opinion, we're definitely adhering to all of that. Consistent with the staff report as well.
Okay. There was also mention of, and this could be for the folks at St. Ursula, but alternative locations for this, were those considered that would not require hillside relief?
If you look at the image that you had placed up originally, it shows the topography of our 22-acre campus, and except for the soccer field and at the very top of the hill where the manor house sits, there really is no flat area short of where we have created the space for the pavilion. Again, the the mention that, we were kind of going forward with this with no concern or almost intentionally leaving out feedback from neighbors. In our defense, again, this does not feel like a major excavation project, does not feel disturbing to the area. We didn't have concerns and still don't have concerns that this would be such a project. The idea of a two-story reference, this is basically a concrete slab being placed on level ground now with an 11-foot ceiling or roof. So we haven't, the 11 feet is what we're dealing with. We're not changing the elevation of the flat area where the concrete slab will be placed. It's simply being excavated to level out that square footage only. The steps, again, those are entirely over on the other side of our drive, not on the hillside, built into a small hillside from one parking area to another, that from the respect of the project itself and the reference to the hillside, in all honesty, they're unconnected. There's nothing of the steps that is going to destabilize anything. There's construction and building all around the area. It's simply adjoining one flat asphalt area to another to create that walking area. But the idea that there were other options that we are choosing not to consider, there really aren't. And again, it's in regards to where we sit and what our hillside coming off from Tusculum, there is a major project going on right now, totally at the school's expense, where we are putting in a major stormwater project, mainly to deal with all of the runoff from neighboring properties at the top and along the side of Tusculum that we have to manage from a stormwater management that comes down our hillside, over on the area where we call our trails, and comes down to our soccer field. And it can no longer, the stormwater is to the point that what was put in years ago no longer can mitigate it. And so we are putting that in. Not only will that benefit obviously our property, but it is dealing with just as much and probably more so the runoff from our neighbors above us along Tusculum. So again, we feel like we are also a neighbor. And I would like to speak to Michael's comment in regards to the evidently continuing sensitivity to our property and the security we had to put in place. I use the analogy of what everyone has had to do as an organization and even individually with cybersecurity. With every school shooting, what has to be put in place, the guidelines, the bar just keeps getting raised. So as a part of being a chartered school in the state of Ohio, we participated in a vulnerability assessment, and it came back that we had a lot of vulnerability, particularly because of how our campus is laid out. We have a broad perimeter. We have a lot of sight lines that you cannot see until someone would be on our property. And we, for purposes of insurability, for purposes of receiving safety grants and safety conditions from the state of Ohio, we had to put in place that we are a private campus and we can't make exceptions. It's not something that we could manage and that we could answer to from an insurability or a safety measure. And again, the bar could be raised, God forbid there's another incident. They will, come up with additional precautions that should be put in place in order to say that you're complying and keeping children safe. So, we understand we certainly didn't want to do that either, but we're left with We do operate a school. We have to operate based on the conditions, first off, that are best for our children, but also comply with state and local ordinances. And with the Homeland Security is even involved in our emergency plan that has to be submitted on an annual basis and approved. And a private campus is a part of that.
Well,
Mr.
thank you
Stuckey.
for your comment. I just one quick response to that, and it's, you know, there are children walking down the middle of Vineyard Place Street, and they're at much greater risk, you know, than the off chance of what you just suggested. You guys should really consider putting in some sidewalks around the campus.
Okay.
Mr.
Ms. Weber, I'll give you one more chance to weigh in here, but this will have to be the final word, so that we can move on. Ms. Weber, what did you want to share?
With regard to options, this is hilly area, and I appreciate that anything you build around here is going to contend with some of that, but not all pieces of property where this could be situated involve being along a ravine that the school shares with other property owners. On their own property, there are hilly areas that are, you know, where they themselves would be the only neighbors. And as far as the height, 20 feet is, you know, what I was alluding to for 2 stories. And if you consider the height of the pavilion itself, which was at least 11 feet, there's also the foundation, and there's the fill and the excavation and the retaining walls that are associated, you know, to support up the pavilion. The pavilion itself is only, you know, 11, 12 feet, but you add all that up. 2 stories is not that high. But that is what the Riesling Knoll people will be looking at collectively, is that height. So that's what I referred to. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so just a couple more questions. To that point about adverse visual impacts, back to St. Ursula, Mr. Cordy, could you tell me again where the proposal is for these evergreen trees as a buffer? And I can share my screen again, Mr. Cordy, if you
Yeah,
put it on there. But
I'm glad you brought it up. It was the last point I was going to make. So the plan as it's currently drawn is shown between the pavilion, along the pavement there, between the pavilion and the driveway. However, I think I could speak for the school. We're willing to work with the neighbors to move them to the kind of the neighbor side, the evergreens or whatever. Yeah, to help screen that. I mean, we show, I think I would say the landscaping plan that by others shows 7 trees, but we're flexible on moving those. So wherever it you know, within reason to appease the neighbors. Jody, Heidi, is that a fair statement?
Yes, originally again, when the steps were coming in from the upper side of the drive, just by default, you know, the original design, and none of this was, you know, permanent, obviously, decision. With the steps now coming in into the front middle of the pavilion, shifting the trees would make sense to kind of cradle in and also create that natural green privacy, so to speak. So we spoke with Gary yesterday. We are, you know, happy to also make sure that those are evergreen trees, so the winter foliage is not an issue. But working with that, we are.
If we can put,
we're not set on the placement of the trees, and we're.
Sorry if I interrupted. We can put a few of them along this edge, you know, to help screen the neighbors.
okay. All right. While I'm sharing my screen, I was going to ask Mr. Russo just to clarify some of his comments earlier, just briefly. And to be clear, this is sort of the ravine we're talking about here. Like this is a downslope from here and a downslope from here into this ravine. Is that right? Okay. And Mr. Russo, is it your concern that potential hillside instability from work here and from the pavilion being located here could lead to slippage on the other side of the ravine as well?
Well, It just depends on the kind of work they're doing, any kind of spillover it would have beyond that building area. So I just kind of be erring on the side of caution that they're very attentive to any dirt placement or any work that they're doing would not affect the opposing hillside, essentially.
Got it. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Thanks, Eric, for that. Okay, this is now the portion where the applicant owner team can make any closing remarks before we adjourn.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there any possibility of making this smaller? I mean, it's covering every square inch of that flat area. And, you know, you can screen it all you want, but we have a direct shot of it. It looks far from over there to our house, but when you sit on our deck and look over to the villa, it's right in our backyard. So you have this big warehouse that's being put in, it feels like, over on that flat area. I mean, 60 by 40 is humongous. I've just been getting texts from neighbors who are really concerned. I mean, everybody's just kind of waking up to this, and they're really concerned about it. And they're concerned about noise in particular, even all down Mary Helen Street, not to mention ours, which overlooks it. So could it be smaller?
So let me ask the folks at St. Ursula a quick question here, more procedural. Do you have any interest in having further conversations with the neighbors at this point? And this is something that we could potentially continue or put a pin in for a week or two so that these discussions can happen offline in a more substantial way. That is something that we sometimes will do during these hearings, but it really is up to you. If you feel like this is the design that that you'd like to go forward with, then we can submit on all the evidence we have here today, and I can make a decision. But if you think it would be at all fruitful or helpful, or you have any interest at all in answering some of these questions from the neighbors or alleviating concerns from the neighbors, I will offer you that opportunity if you'd like to. So any thoughts on that?
We intend to keep the submit of the design. We did send a letter stating that we would be moving the trees, and we can send that to the homeowners association. We did send it to one of the owners, but we can move the tree design. And there was one more question on the noise. We just wanted to answer to that. Our playground is closer to the homeowner's property than this pavilion will be. And the intended use of the pavilion is for an outdoor classroom. So it will be, a quiet place of learning versus the noise that we're hearing here in the window outside from all the children playing at recess.
Got it. Okay. And are there proposed hours of use? Will it be consistent with school hours?
Yeah, 8 to 3 is the main hours of use. We did put on occasion that we'd like to be able to use it for an after-school club, of Girl Scout or Boy Scout meeting, something of that nature. And I did send a letter to the homeowners to say that we would never use it past 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And again, primary use is 8 to 3, and only for our community. It will never be for public use.
Got it. Okay. And this is the size that you would like to submit for approval. You don't want any consideration on a smaller size pavilion, correct?
Yes, and this is based on our class size. So this would allow for one grade to be out there at a time. That's the measurements that we have it based on at this point.
Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to say?
One grade.
Sure. Anything else in closing or otherwise before we adjourn here today? From the applicants and the owners here. That's your opportunity.
No, and yet again, the intention of this is to, aesthetically and educationally add asset to the school property and to the neighborhood. We really feel for the students that, especially coming out of the pandemic, this is where a lot of the outdoor education began. And now we have, students sitting in parking lots on sides of curbs, and it would be just nice for them to have a place to sit for outdoor learning. That's the intention.
Mr. Stuckey, is there any possibility that if there were a determination to generally approve this, it would be subject to certain actual formal commitments, such as having to do with noise, or hours of use, or that there be some kind of additional soil inspections or supports, safeguards for the hillside? Can you put in conditions to an approval?
Yeah, every decision that I do issue does have conditions. Some of them are pretty standard in that I'm just going to see if I can find one to pull up quickly here, but they have to comply with all building code standards. The work has to be, and the permit has to be executed within 2 years of the decision. I'm going to see if maybe I can find some others, but yes, I can put conditions in. I like to make sure that those conditions are enforceable.
Yes.
It's an important piece of it. So,
well, I appreciate
the noise concerns are difficult, can be very difficult to enforce. However, I can put in conditions that there's no amplified sound or speakers and things like that. So those are all things that I can consider to try to prevent or mitigate adverse impacts if it's approved.
Yes, thank you for that information, because I think Mr. Walks made a very good point that present intentions of people on the scene now are one thing, but times change, people change, circumstances change, and a representation at present that has no sort of backup teeth to it could go by the boards in the long term.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Again, anything else from the applicants, the owners? Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay, we'll leave it at that then. I have a lot of testimony and materials here to consider. I am going to take this under advisement. I mentioned at the beginning that a decision typically takes about 2 weeks. As soon as I finish those decisions, the formal decision will come in writing, and it will include all the information that I use to make the decision and outline the standards that I use to make the decision. It will also include any conditions, if it is approved, what those conditions of approval are. And it will also include information about appealing the decision. If it's approved or not approved and you'd like to appeal that to the Zoning Board of Appeals, that is an option, but you need to do that within 30 days of receipt of the decision. But again, that'll be outlined within the decision itself. If you have any other questions moving forward about the process, or any sort of general questions about what's happening or what could happen next, please feel free to reach out. I cannot take in any new testimony or evidence now that the hearing is closed. And so if you think of something that you wish you would have said at the hearing, I know that's frustrating, but I will not be considering any additional emails, correspondence, or anything like that that has to do with the actual substance of this application, just strictly procedural questions. As soon as I finish the decision, I put it in the PDF, I email it to everybody who's in the hearing here. You all will get it at the same time in the same email, and you'll get it really just moments after it's complete. Yeah, I think that's it. Are there any questions about anything right now before we jump off here?
Just one clarifying question. So your decision could be to approve, even though there are folks disapproving of the zoning request, right?
Yeah, that's exactly my role, is to make the decision between the two competing groups.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Like Terry might have a question. You'll have to unmute.
So does that mean that, or you don't know if you're gonna be requesting more information on the soil? You don't know if you're thinking about that yet? I mean, is that out of the question that we're gonna be double checking the stability of that hillside?
I think they agree to do that.
Or are
So
you-
that, yeah, so I will make a decision, a zoning decision based on all the information that I have, which includes everything in the application materials and the geotechnical report. If this is approved and moves forward in the permitting process, there is a full geotechnical report and a more technical analysis that is done by the building plans examiners to ensure hillside stability and integrity of the project and the dig in general. So that will happen if this is approved.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everyone for their time and their testimony here today. I really do appreciate all of the feedback from the neighborhood. It really does help me gain some additional perspective that I just can't otherwise get during these hearings. So thank you all for your time and your testimony. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, look for a decision from me via email within the next few weeks. Okay.
Thank you.